Hey everyone, just quick announcement before I play today's episode with Chris Ward, and I'm extremely excited to share our conversation. You guys are going to love him. But just quick announcement about the release of my first children's book of my Healthy Children's Book series. And in the first book, it's called Maddox's Trip to the Chiropractor, and it follows a toddler's visit to her local chiropractor. It shows her excitement and just why chiropractic care is so beneficial for her health. And I think you guys are going to love it. And for each purchase of the book, it's going to be supporting the Unlock Wellness Project. And what that means is that for each purchase of the book, the Unlock Wellness Project is going to be donating a wellness bag to a child in need. So these are bags that have non-toxic soaps, shampoos, conditioner, toothpaste, toothbrush, just items that children in need have difficulty getting, and it's going to make a large impact on their life. So we're going to be working with organizations that help children in need to get these bags to them. And we're also going to be reaching out to different organizations that are helping hurricane victims in Houston, Texas, and also in the Florida area as well. So each purchase of the book supplies a wellness bag. You can learn more about the book and about the Unlock Wellness Project if you go to my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's DRKASEY Johnson.com. Click on the shop tab and the children's book option. And when you do this, there's a short description and also a short video. That way you can learn a little bit more about the book and the Unlock Wellness Project and how you can support. You can purchase directly from my site, or you can also just search on Amazon and you can find it there as well. So thank you guys so much for checking out the book, for the support. If you do purchase the book, be sure to share it with the hashtag UW Project, and I'll be sure to repost that and also give you a shout out on the Unlock Wellness podcast. So thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you loved today's episode with Chris Ward. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Casey, and excited to have my new friend Chris Ward on the podcast today. I came across Chris's podcast by accident and listened in and just really loved the work that he was doing. And Chris is the host of the podcast Like a Bigfoot and is an endurance athlete and in love with trail running. And I'm just excited for him to get to share his own personal wellness story and just share his love for trail running and just to get more detail about what he's doing with his podcast. So Chris, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I gotta say, it's a lot easier being interviewed than doing the interviewing. So props to you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing. It's probably, it's a little different being on the other end, right?
Yeah, because I'm like, I can just talk about myself all day.
No, you don't have to plan anything. Yeah. But yeah, so
exactly.
So you just want to just jump into your backstory, where you're from, and then what led you to be into more endurance sports and just how that all kind of played out for you.
Yeah, so originally I'm from Muscatine, Iowa, which I want you to imagine Iowa. It kind of looks like a face, right? It has like a big nose. We were like the booger. We're like right on the Mississippi River.
Right.
It was a great place to grow up, and I was always into sports. Both my parents were coaches at our high school, and my dad was like, my dad's just like the constant coach. You know what I mean? Like,
what did they coach?
My dad coached girls basketball, and they went to state right when I was born, and then he coached football, and my mom coached tennis, and I tried to play tennis once and I was terrible. I hit the ball over the fence every single time. But yeah, so they were both coaches. So I was always in athletics and always going to practices and being a ball boy for football and all that. And, eventually, became obsessed with a couple sports like football and hockey and anything where I got to like run into people. I was all about that. Anything with hand-eye coordination, though, not so much.
Wasn't happening.
Yeah. So, I was thinking about it this morning, actually. When I was in football in high school, it taught me so much just about myself and just mostly about hard work and the amount of work and effort you have to put in to achieve anything. Because I was always like a smaller guy, like undersized. But I played lineman, which is like the big the big behemoths on the
Right.
football team, you know? And if you looked at our game film, you'd see these four giant guys, two of them on either side of me, and I was center, and I swear I look like a hobbit. So, you know, I realized even if you don't have a lot of talent, if you just started working hard at something, good things are going to happen.
Right. Just consistency overall, for sure.
Totally. And I didn't even think about it at the time in those terms, but now looking back, I'm so grateful that I had that experience and that I was able to learn those lessons at a young age. You know, and then from there I went into college and played rugby for basically my whole time there, and started running just to train for rugby. Because rugby, you're running like 7 or 8 miles a game.
I mean, it's pretty similar to soccer, right? Except it's not even. But soccer is kind of different too, because you stop at certain points of the field, right? To be honest, I don't even know the rules of rugby. Is it basically you're running the whole field back and forth all of the time, or is it pretty similar to like soccer, to where you have your like zones? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So first of all, I will say for the first year I played, I didn't even know the rules of rugby.
Just right around.
Just so many penalties. You don't have your own zone, so you're running up and down the field, but there are moments of stoppage where people get penalties. Sure. Or it goes out of bounds, and you do rest. But I mean, I think I looked it up one time, and the average person playing the position I was playing, which was like running back, they run like 7 or 8 miles a game.
Wow.
While getting like kicked in the face, basically.
Losing a few teeth in between plays.
Yeah.
No big deal.
So yeah, it was an awesome sport to play, and I loved it, because going from a lineman where you never get a run with the ball and like score touchdowns and stuff, into rugby where like anybody gets to do that was a super cool experience. And you know, to make a long story short, I guess I ended up falling in love with running, which I was surprised about, because for the first year and a half, I would go on like 3-mile runs and just have to force myself through it.
Yeah.
You know? And then all of a sudden, one day, I specifically remember, it's so cheesy, but I guess I'm a cheesy guy. I was listening to the Beatles, and I was listening to Dear Prudence, and the song is literally like, it's a very nice day, and then it's like, look around, round, and I'm like looking around, I'm like, it is a nice day.
It's a great day, you're right.
And I'm like, I think I'm liking running.
That's funny. So it was just like a mindset switch just in that moment kind of thing.
Totally. And it was so
That's
weird
cool.
that just in that moment, from then on, I absolutely loved running. And that's why I tell people, if you want to be a runner and you don't think that you'll ever actually be a runner, like, you do have to put in the time. It takes like 6 or 7 months before your body's going to really adjust, and to the point where you can start relaxing into running.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And it's just crazy too. Like, running is, I mean, you could say, I mean, running's so much more mindset than it is physical anyways. Like, I mean, I can't remember. I might have been one of my last guests. I think it was Brock Cannon. I could be wrong, but he was saying, like, he's like, running is it's, how did he word it? Not just stress. I'll think of it, but it was just talking just about how, you know, it's really hard on your body, but just if you have that mindset of just getting through it and just enjoying it and having fun, like, that makes so much of a difference. Oh yeah, definitely. Like, even this morning, it was an hour of me turning off my brain, basically, and just letting it wander. And I ended up just brainstorming for an hour on some, you know, crazy like life goal that I want to do in the future, cool. You know, and then you like picture those goals like so clearly because you've given yourself that time. I mean, if you think about it, and I do it too. Some days we wake up and just distract ourselves from moment one to the moment we go to bed, and don't actually give ourselves that like break of like, you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to like,
entertain yourself, looking on the internet or watching TV, like you can take a break and you'll be fine.
Right.
So,
And running is a form of, almost a form of meditation, like you were saying, whenever you can clear your mind and then be able to come up with really great ideas, like you were saying, like it's cool that the things that can really come up if you allow yourself to kind of just relax and just have like, just empty your mind, and then things can really come to you.
yeah, exactly. And so that kind of leads into my next step of the journey was, I was running constantly like 3 to 5 miles a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you bump it up, and I did a couple half marathons on the road, which were pretty fun. But I never thought I would run more than that ever. I was like, half marathons, like a perfect distance. Why would anyone want to do more than that?
Right.
It sounds stupid. And then just on a whim in an airport, I picked up the book Born to Run.
Nice.
Which in my mind, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a cool scientific book about running, which is something I do every day. And as soon as I open it up, have you read the book?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like an actual like adventure story with the science thrown in here and there. But is this whole crazy adventure story? I'm like, what? People run on trails?
Right. It's not just a treadmill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or I've hiked on trails before, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, wait a second, wait. You can run on these things? And I came home from that trip. It was a wedding in Alabama, and I got back to Iowa and decided I'm going to run my first marathon after teaching one day. So I called it the Chris Ward's after school marathon.
That's funny.
And basically I just took off from my classroom and ran a marathon and got back to
down your street,
just down the like country roads of Iowa, and got back into the parking lot with no one around and just fist pumped. It's like, yes.
Man, how did you do? Did you like take anything with you? You're just out there running by yourself. Okay, that's good.
So I had like a backpack full of water, and I didn't know exactly what I was doing at the time, so I was really sore by the end of it. But I had the backpack full of water, and I remember, about like 20 miles in, stopping at a gas station and talking to the cashier, and she was like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm running a marathon. She's like, oh, in a couple weeks or like a month? When is it? And I'm like, it's right now. Right. I'm like 20 miles in. Let me buy this Gatorade.
That's funny. Yeah. So you were feeling okay? Were you like exhausted, or like, did you ever have a moment where you wanted to quit, or you felt pretty great?
Well, that was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to do it that way, is I wanted to give myself the opportunity to quit.
Yeah.
And then see if I can overcome that, because no one, like my wife knew I was out there, but that was it. Like no one's gonna fault me for not finishing the marathon.
Hold you accountable.
Like no one else is holding me accountable except myself in that moment. And I wanted that experience just to see if I could push through it. And I didn't really have any problems except for, some leg soreness, and I was going pretty slow. So it's not like I was anaerobic or out of breath or like dying in that sense. But yeah, so I pushed myself through that, and it was awesome. And that kind of corresponded with my wife and I moving to Virginia, Southern Virginia for her job.
That's cool.
And
what part of Virginia?
So it's Danville, Virginia.
Perfect.
It's like right on the border of North Carolina,
okay,
like
cool.
Smack dab in the middle of the state.
That's cool. No, I grew up in West Virginia, so I didn't know. But you said South, so wouldn't probably be that close. But that's cool, though.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the one thing, like we never made it to West Virginia.
There's some really beautiful places that you probably could have found to run. Yeah, you might have to make a trip for it.
I know, maybe we will. But because I miss the Southeast, because what happened is our town we're in had 35 miles of single track mountain bike trails. Is one of the best mountain bike trails on the East Coast, apparently.
Oh, that's cool.
It was awesome. The trails were amazing. So, I ended up running those like once a week to start with, and then it just morphed into that's what I ran every single day,
that's
basically.
Awesome.
And I teach middle schoolers, so by the end of the day, after talking to 14-year-olds all day, you need that break just to reset your brain. So
how did you find that? Did you find that whenever you kind of switched to more trail running, that it allowed you to enjoy it even more? Because it wasn't obviously, running on a treadmill that long is awful, but like compared to just going out and running, just taking it to the trail, like was it just a big switch for you? Like you enjoyed it, you were having fun, like it's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's so many reasons why I absolutely just fell in love with it. And, one reason is you're just basically exposing yourself to all of this wildlife. And so, you're going out, you're seeing deer every day, you're seeing like a raccoon in the middle of the trail, and you're like, should I run by this raccoon or is it going to attack me? Snakes, which are terrifying, especially in Virginia, but you're jumping over snakes, and you're just exposing yourself to all that awesome nature. And then at the same time, you're running up and down these hills, your legs are getting dirty, and in Virginia, it's ridiculously humid. So you're like completely drenched with sweat. It sounds terrible when I describe it sometimes, but like covered with spider webs.
Yeah.
And by the end of the run, you feel like you did something,
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. And where I was, I could do like a 6-mile loop one day and then do a completely different one the next. And,
did you have any like crazy like run-ins to where you were kind of scared or kind of got hurt out there by yourself? Or do you have any crazy stories like out on the trail? I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Oh, totally. There was, and I have even more now that I'm out here in Colorado, but
I'm sure.
There was always the run-in with the copperheads, which I became like really good at spotting them, the first time I ever saw one, I went down and got really close and took a picture and brought it into work the next day and showed it to one of my coworkers. And then she's like, that's a ridiculously poisonous snake. Right. And I was like, oh, there's because in Iowa, nothing can kill you really. Right. Like there's no animals that can kill you. And I'm like, oh, there's poisonous snakes out here. Huh.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, there was one run, one day after school. There's a little cement trail before you get into the woods. And so I'm running down the cement trail and I turn left to go into the woods, and there's some overgrown grass on the trail. And I step down, and about 3 inches from my foot is this giant copperhead. And man. I let out some weird noise. I was like, "Whoa!" And I think I fell to the ground. My mind went blank for a second. I realized I would be terrible in a terrible situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just panicked.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't do snakes. That's awful.
Yeah.
But you haven't died yet, so that's cool.
I'm cool. Yeah, I never got bit, which was awesome.
Nice.
But and then, there's the whole different experience. So eventually I'm a family man too. So I want to get my runs in the morning before my families wake up, preferably, so I can have the rest of the day to play with them. And going out and running in the dark, now that's and through the woods too, that's a completely different experience. So if you're listening out there and you haven't done it, I think you should at least try it once.
Yeah. Do you have like a headlamp, or are you just going?
So for a while I've used the headlamp, but it bounces up and down so much it almost makes me queasy. So I just bring my phone and then flip the little light.
Yeah, that's smart too.
Yeah. So, but the first time you look in the woods and you see like 20 eyes glowing back at you is and I think one of the times I went, there was a cop in the parking lot.
Oh, really?
And and I had to talk to him and be like, I'm just coming. It was like 4 a.m. I'm
right.
like, I'm just coming out here to run. I'm not going to do anything crazy. He's like, you are crazy for running in the dark, but go for it. So
yeah, no, I bet that is crazy for sure. That's cool. So you started doing more like running like that, and then when did you actually start competing in some of these races? Because at this point, it's just like you're enjoying it and you're just going out and just doing it for fun, right?
Yeah. So I think we moved to Virginia in July, and then that fall I did my first 50K
nice.
In Charlotte, and it was cool. It was funny. You learn something every time you do a race, or you compete. You pick up some new knowledge. So I finished the 50K. I feel amazing, And the very first thing the race director says to me is like, "You ran in those shorts?" And I like look down, and it's like basketball shorts I had from the football days.
That's funny.
And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no congratulations."
Right. How about just ran 50K?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That,
And then I did another one a few months later, and you just kind of at times you really realize what you're made of. So I did one in the Linville Gorge area
mhm.
of North Carolina, which is so pretty. It's like the prettiest area in North Carolina,
That's
in my
awesome.
opinion. And when I was there, it was completely foggy. So you couldn't see more than like 5 feet in front of you. It was 34 degrees and it was a downpour
Oh
the whole
man.
entire.
Rain or snow?
It was rain. It was
Oh
super cold rain. And there were times like I'd take my gloves off to try to put something in my backpack, and then I could barely get my gloves back on.
man. And that
And
was a 50K as well?
that was the 50K. Thank God. Because some people did the 50 miler. I'm like, I don't know how they
Oh
made it.
man. So you said you did like two 50Ks pretty close to each other then, right?
Yeah. So I did one. Well, here's the thing. Like I did one, and then I was like, well, I'm already in shape. I already put in the hard work is the training, and I
Right.
already did that. So yeah, so I did another one a few months later. I took like a month kind of lighter and then went back into it. So
I gotcha. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, because I know there's that community of like ultra runners. I was just wondering, like, what kind of schedule they had because, like, how frequently they do runs like that. Because to an average person that might go out and do an occasional 5K, like a 50K seems super extreme, but they're doing these runs pretty frequently, right?
yeah, well, some people get like really into it and it's like once or twice a month, they're doing
Man,
something crazy. Or, I've done a couple 50 milers since then, and you do a 50K as a training run. So you might as well just sign up for an event
right?
and like focus on it as a training run, which is a weird thing to say.
No, I
Um,
know. Isn't that crazy? Because like at one point you were like, I don't know if I could ever do that, and then that's just like a training day. I think that's
yeah.
amazing. Like just that shift that you get just from being like just gradual, consistent training, and just I love that. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm all about consistency. At school this year, because I went back to teaching, we had to write down like our superpower, and I put Captain Consistency because
Love it.
honestly, it's all about doing the little things right
Right?
day after day after day, and it's super boring. It's like when you're describing it to people, it's not very exciting, but you're like, you have to do those to be successful. Like you're not
Exactly.
just gonna wake up one day and be like, I can run a 50K
Right.
now. It's like, no, you gotta put the training in, and you have to do the things that are right for your body, which aren't really exciting at
Exactly.
times.
Yeah, especially, between different stuff, like if you're tired or if you have family stuff or social stuff, like it can be challenging, but if you want it, it's just, you can do it, but it's going to take a lot of consistency for sure.
Exactly, which is why, like, I mean, waking up early is important to me, and that's why you mentioned some ultra runners doing it all the time. It
Yeah.
seems like, and it's funny because as an ultra runner, you go to the website to sign up, which is called Ultra Sign Up, and you see all of these races, and you want to do them all because part of it is also is exploring. You get to explore this new area and like these new trails and
Hmm.
these views you've never seen before. But having a family makes it like, no, I gotta balance this. I have to make sure I'm not doing
Right.
too many of these because it is stress. I mean, even though I'm waking up early, like the training still affects my family.
Right. No, absolutely. That's totally true. And like when you were talking about the 50 miler, like how was that first 50 miler for you? Like what was your like what kind of pace do you have for a 50 miler?
Yeah, so my first 50 miler was the Mount Masochist, which sounds awesome.
It does sound awesome.
50 miler it's close to Lynchburg, Virginia. And it's notoriously longer than 50 miles. So that's something too. If you're out there listening, you want to do trail races, like the distances are not going to be exact. So just be ready for that. A 50 miler could mean like a 56 miler, and a
Really?
50K could mean like a 28 miler instead of 31. So, it's not exactly exact. So my first one was like 56 miles. And honestly, I ended up falling like in pace with this group of people, and these two ladies were like super experienced ultra runners. I think there were two of the more experienced ones in that area of Virginia. So I kind of was just following their lead. And she would, when she walked, I was walking, you know, and you end up talking and becoming friends and stuff for the day, which is super cool. But yeah, so I would say the pace, that one had a lot of hills too. So when it's uphill and it's a really long race, for us and who are not trying to win the thing, who are just trying to survive the thing, you end up walking, like power hiking those sections. So we power hiked quite a bit of it. So I think I finished in like the first one in like 10 hours, probably, which is what I was shooting for. Yeah, I felt so terrible after that one that I didn't do another one for a while. And, you know, yeah, I mean, it's funny, a 50 miler, the last 10 miles or so, you really have to dig deep. And, you know, you go to that zone. I call it kind of desirable difficulties, right? Like you're signing up for an event specifically to bring adversity to your life. And that's what I wanted. And I wanted to see if I could do it. And I've only ran 2 at this point, but both times, like, there's never been a doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to finish. I just was always like, oh, how much is this going to destroy me before I
Well, and you know, that's, you made me remember, because I was talking about the quote that guy made. He was just saying that it was it's all suffering, right? Like, you're gonna suffer in a race like that, but it's just having that mindset, like you said, like you're just gonna finish it and just try to enjoy it the best you can.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did one this year in Monument Valley, which is in Utah/Arizona. It's in the desert, basically, and it's so beautiful and so awesome. And what I realized is you really are living, like, you're living life in a day during an ultra marathon. You're feeling all the ups and then all the downs. You're like experiencing all the ranges of emotions. You're giving yourself time, like hours and hours, to just be with your own thoughts. And you know, you're definitely experiencing all there is to life in one day, which is super cool.
That's totally true. Because I mean, like you were saying, just every emotion available, energy, and then exhaustion, and then like you were just saying, like, how many, I mean, there's never just a normal day where you have 10 hours, like you were saying in that one race, just to be alone with your thoughts. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, that's true. That's a really good point.
And, you know, you reach this point where you're so exhausted, like you're not like BSing yourself anymore. Right. You know, all your thoughts are what you actually think and feel. And you're kind of seeing yourself like, how am I going to act when I'm this exhausted and this beat up and in this much pain? Like, how am I going to treat other people? How am I going to treat myself? And it's really interesting. And I think it's something that's beneficial for people to go through. And it doesn't have to be 50 milers, you know, like it could be anything. Like for me, 50 milers, for other people who are more used to that distance, I'm sure they would say like, oh, 50 milers are a piece of cake, but 100 milers are where you experience that. And then, you know, I've talked to a few people who be like, 100 milers, no big deal. 200 milers, and you're like, whoa.
Ooh, I know, right? I know. I listened to the one guy, what's his name, Ryan, that he did the 200.
Yeah.
Man, that guy's incredible.
Yeah, he was super cool. And yeah, 200 milers are, I cannot wrap my head around it. I got done with my 50 miler last March, and the last 10 miles, like, all the strength in my legs just left me. And I got to the finish line. I'm like, I legitimately do not know how people do 100 miles. I couldn't go another mile.
It's just insane. Yeah, no, I don't know. It's I don't know if you listen to this episode or not. I'll send you the link if you haven't. But like, I had, her name was Jennifer Steinman, and she had she made the documentary Desert Runners, and basically,
oh, so cool. Yeah, I love that movie.
Do you love it? Yeah. So she was the director, and she's amazing. But like stuff like that, it's like, you know, they're running I forget the mileage each day, right? I can't remember right off. But they're doing it in the most extreme deserts in the world. Yes. But it's just like the ability to push yourself in situations like that people actually can handle that and are able to, if you can actually just withstand it and have the right mindset. It's just, things like that are just amazing to me. Well,
the mindset for me has always been just keep moving forward. Yeah. Like, if you're not going I go into a race with no expectations, where I'm just like, except finishing, you know, and some days I feel amazing and I go pretty fast and I place fairly high. And then other days I did this 150K in Asheville, North Carolina, and it was super steep, like 12,000 feet of elevation gain.
Wow.
And 12,000 feet of loss. And I remember going into the race thinking I was going to like try to compete, but then I just fell into this group of guys who were like super cool and they were my age, and we just started chatting and hanging out. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather experience this adventure with this group, with this kind of quote unquote like team of guys,
Yeah. No, that is
it was
cool.
awesome. And you meet these people, and since you hang out with them for like 9 hours and all you're doing is talking during that time, you feel like you really get to know them. And you're like one of the guys I'm still in communications with every so often. And I would like to say we're friends.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you were saying like you have those like breakthroughs whenever you do runs like that as well. So it's just like, there's really not time when you're not in like that physical condition to like kind of beat around the bush. You're being direct, like you're just being yourself. And it really is a great way to connect with other people too.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, the message I like to promote to people, and the one I'm trying to do with the podcast is like, it doesn't need to be 50 miler. It doesn't need to be 100 miler. It doesn't need to be like the most extreme events of all time. If for you doing a 10K is the one that's scary and the one that can kind of intimidate you and really push your limits and make you experience those things, that's great. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Like you should totally chase that goal. Today, my 3.5-year-old, she ran her first race ever, her first trail race. And
that's so cute. She looks so cute in that video, by the way.
Thanks, thank you. And so it was a 1.6 miler, and we were gonna sign her up for the half mile, but she's like, no, I want to do more. And we're like, okay, this is a good idea.
Right.
And it just, as I thought about it on the drive home, I think she experienced what I experienced in my 50 miler in that 1.5 miles.
Right. Yeah.
She had the moments of like, this is amazing. This is super fun. And I will say she was probably the youngest person trying to do 1.6.
How did she do?
We definitely got last.
But she finished though.
She finished, and it was super cool because she was giving high fives to everybody that was coming back because it was an out and back. She was yelling adventure because that's what me and my friends do during adventure races.
That's funny.
And I just had a blast. I was about to cry the whole entire time.
That's awesome. That's so cute.
But like 100 yards from the finish, it took like 25 minutes to go those 100 yards. Cause I was kind of like, man, do I want to pick her up and carry her? Like,
right.
So she was just walking. I mean, she was still moving forward, but like very slow, just over it by that point. And I'm like, wow, she's kind of going through what I went through with my 50 miler, but it's just, it's 1.6
her scale. Yep.
Yeah. Cause that's what's hard for her. And I was thinking about for other people, like, maybe what's hard for someone else is stepping outside their comfort zone and joining a club, or maybe someone, has never gone to a yoga class and that's what's intimidating to them. Like, I think there's so much to be gained by having those experiences and really, really stepping outside your comfort zone. And
Absolutely.
Honestly, for me, the podcast is was anyways stepping outside my comfort zone, and still is.
Yeah.
Still is to a point, because you're talking to people who you may have never met before, and
you have no idea how it's gonna go, and like
oh yeah
yeah.
I was talking to one lady, her name's Caroline Paul, and super smart, like so smart, and I was so excited to talk to her. She's an author. She has this amazing TED Talk, and so already I'm intimidated, right? Like, I'm already like, oh my God, she's going to see right through me and just be like, this guy's a dummy, which of course she didn't. She's like the nicest lady ever.
Yeah.
But you have that intimidation. And then, she's been on like the Tim Ferriss podcast, which is really cool. And then at the same time, I was back in Iowa sitting in my childhood bedroom doing the interview. And I'm like, oh my God, like she's going to just see me as a poser right now.
Right. Yeah. No, it is super intimidating. I think it's just, it's with anything. I mean, like you were comparing it to like running. It's just, when you step out of your comfort zone enough, then you form a new comfort zone, and then you have to just continually just get out of that comfort zone. And I don't think that's something that ever ends, but it's just moving forward.
Yeah. Well, and then you kind of become hooked to that feeling of learning something new.
Right. And it's not as scary. Because I mean, like, I'm sure, like, and I tell people this all the time, like, whenever I first put my first podcast out, like, I released it, and I released it with 3 episodes. And that entire day, I seriously wanted to throw up the entire day. I was terrified. Like, I didn't eat. Like, I was terrified. But now, like, it's not a big deal, right? But
Yeah.
so it's really cool when you think, and I'm sure it's, you know, somewhat the same with you. Like, you were nervous, and now it's no big deal. And it's really cool to see the progression.
Totally. And and that's just something to keep in mind with any goal. And it's kind of one of the benefits of doing something new, like for me, running, or I've done a couple like adventure races or climbing a mountain that's scary. Like once you do those things, you learn the process of doing something new and doing something and being successful at it. And you're like, you know what? Like I was nervous for that, but it didn't kill me, you know? And so you kind of learn that the way of being successful in everything you do after accomplishing something, anything. Like I said, even if it's a 10K, like you'll be able to apply those concepts you learned training and doing the event to the rest of your life.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. That's cool. And do you want to talk about how, like we were talking about our podcast, like how you actually, why you decided to do your podcast, and like kind of that moment of like when you made that decision to start it? Because I always think that's really interesting too.
Yeah.
But yeah, just kind of walk through the start of like a Bigfoot podcast.
Okay. So I guess first I want to start by saying I started another podcast like 3 years before it. And it was all about like teaching, because I went to this new school district. I came from a really nice school district in Iowa where we learned a lot of like really cool concepts and stuff. And I went to this one in Virginia that I knew was struggling a bit. And I was like, they're probably not going to teach me as much, like teaching strategies and stuff. So I was like, I'm going to start a teaching podcast. And the whole point is going to be me being like the newbie, the beginner who doesn't know a lot, but gets to talk to these cool people and learn all these interesting things.
That's cool.
And so anyways, yeah, totally. I recorded 2 episodes, put them out. It was really cool. I got some awesome guests. And then in the classroom, I was struggling because it was a completely new school. I actually had to do classroom management and stuff, which I sucked at. and so I was just like, once again, I had the imposter syndrome, which is kind of like people are going to see through me and realize that I don't know what I'm doing, you know?
Right.
Which is funny because I wanted that to be the case for the podcast.
Right.
And so I just
kind of the opposite. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Like it's funny. Like there are things that I truly believe in my core values, but when a situation comes up, I'm just as uncomfortable as anyone else with it, you know? So I failed at that podcast, and it always kind of bugged me because, you know, it was against my core beliefs of like, hey, failing is good. You know, fail is first attempt in learning. And even if you fail, like you should learn something from it. And so 3 years went by, and I knew I was going to have this year where I was going to stay at home with my kids. And I loved that. And I was so excited to be Mr. Dad. But at the same time, I also wanted to be achieving something of my own. Have you ever read Seth Godin?
I've heard him on a few podcasts. I haven't actually read his book though.
Okay, he's awesome. He's the best. You should read all of his books and all of his blogs.
What book do you recommend the most? If you
the best one, in my opinion, is called The Icarus Deception. And basically his big thing he promotes is it's not safe in this day and age, the quote unquote like old safe route, which is having a job, like, you know, it's not the safe route anymore. The safer route is starting something of your own, because that could potentially like morph into something else, or, you know, it just builds different skills. And so I had that in mind. I've always wanted to do a podcast, and I was like, I don't really want to do it about teaching, because I realized I love teaching, but I don't like love teaching. Right. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't, I really love doing the act of teaching, but like talking about it, though it can be really interesting to me,
Like it's not your hobby.
Yeah, I felt like I wouldn't be able to produce that much content about it. But talking about adventure and athletics and sports and mindset and motivation, like all that stuff, like I'm all in for, you know. And I'm lucky and blessed enough to have really inspiring friends who were in the midst of doing some really cool things at the time. And so, you know, I was like, well, you know, the first 10 episodes, I could legitimately just talk to my friends and, you know, they're doing some really crazy, inspiring stuff. So there you go. Content covered. I'm not going to be really uncomfortable because it's my friends, you know. So that was kind of the start of it. And from there, it's just been so cool. I don't know how else to describe it. It's an excuse to reconnect with people maybe you knew in a different era of your life, and you've never had an excuse to call them and talk to them.
Right?
Yeah, talk to them for an hour.
It's what I tell people all the time. It's like the coolest part of even doing this. It's like it's just the connections. Like the connections like I've made are just incredible, and I'm sure you feel the same way about that too.
Totally, because after talking with somebody for, you know, however long, you feel like you really know them.
Yeah.
You know, and the reconnection part has been really cool too, because there was a kid I coached as a freshman in football, and I remember he was just a tiny little skinny kid at the time, but then he started playing tight end for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I'm a huge Iowa Hawkeye fan, obviously, being from Iowa.
Right.
And so watching him on TV for 2 years, and I was so excited, and I was bragging to everybody. I'm like, yeah, I coached him, no big deal.
Yeah.
And then being able to, you know, shoot him a message on Facebook and be like, hey man, I'm doing this podcast. I'd love to hear your perspective on athletics and blah, blah, blah. And just being able to reconnect with him. And then realizing that every person you meet has something they can teach you.
For sure.
Because after that podcast with him, his name's George Kittle, and now he's the starting tight end for 49ers. So I'm super pumped for him.
That's so cool. Yeah.
But listening to him, I learned so much from him, and I've applied quite a few things he told me to my own life. And I was like, when I knew this kid, he was like 14 years old, you know? I'm learning so much from this guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah. And then just being able to have an excuse to reach out to people, who otherwise, why would you have an excuse to talk to them?
Right.
You know?
Right. No, and then obviously it helps them because it's more people are learning about them. It's just a win-win, and it's just really cool along the way.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And then, you know, my favorite episodes personally are the ones I do with some of my best friends, just because I'm like, a little bit more relaxed and stuff. And I'm like, I'm a big fan of Calvin Johansson, you know, and so, you know, those are the ones. I don't know if you find it hard, but I find it hard to go back and listen because I'm like, oh,
you criticize yourself.
You criticize yourself. You have the self-doubt and all that fun stuff. So for most of them, I don't go back and listen, but the ones with my buddies, I'm like, yeah, that was fun talking to them. So
that's cool. So I know you've had a lot of really great guests, and I listened to a bunch, and I'm excited that, well, in a way, I'm excited that I did find you a little later because I can go back and just keep listening, and because you do an amazing job. By the way, you're super articulate, and you do a good job at just being like, you know, bringing their personalities out, but at the same time, it's just a relaxed conversation. And I love that. It's not forced. But you know, you've had a lot of great guests. So like, has there been like, well, I guess what's been the biggest takeaway from like learning from some of these guys? And maybe it's something endurance related, but like, do you have any like big takeaways that you've gotten from them? I know that's probably a pretty loaded question, but I don't know if there's anything that stands out for you.
I mean, one of the takeaways, which I've gotten just from podcasts in general, not even mine, but like just listening to all sorts of podcasts, is you realize like all these successful people are just regular people, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes you realize like, oh, I could do that. I could be a successful person. And I love the fact that you hear someone's journey and you can see like, oh, they started out doing this, and then these are the steps they took to ultimately find success. And that's so cool to me. And, you know, being an endurance nerd too, you get the people who actually know stuff
Right.
and you get to ask them like intricate questions about, you know, injuries or recovery
Or get your tips from Ryan for the 200 that you're going to sign up for eventually, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and then you get the inspiration too,
Yeah,
you know, and that's what I get. I've left some of the podcasts being like, oh, I'm so pumped. And, you know, it's been in that sense, it's really cool. I guess some specific ones, I mentioned George, but one thing he told me, which I actually used in my 50 miler, is he talked about for a while, he just drew on his wristband when he played football, he drew an R, the letter R. And after every single play, he would touch it with his other hand, and that would be his reset button. And he'd be like, okay, whatever just happened, whether I dropped the biggest pass of my life or I just scored a touchdown, whatever, reset. That doesn't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is right now. And
That's awesome.
And doing that, even during the race, I remember feeling terrible, like stomach's hurting for me and I'm feeling like crap. And I would just touch my wrist every couple minutes and it would give me a boost of energy because it would just be a reminder of like, hey man, like you're existing right now. It doesn't matter that you still have 20 miles to go or anything like that. So, you know, that was cool. My buddy Calvin, who I also just mentioned, he is just like a pocket full of inspiration. And I'm lucky enough, I can call him every day and get my calspirations, what I call him. But he climbed the 100 tallest mountains in the US in 100 days.
Wow, man. And maybe I might have to get his contact and him on here too.
You totally should.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll get that
so
after.
Good. Yeah. And he's just the best, you know, at basically just being consistent with his daily actions and making sure he's really being conscious of how he's thinking and how those thoughts are turning into action, you know, which is awesome. So
that's awesome.
And my personal favorite parts are when people talk about how they had like the worst blisters of all time or their eyeball got stuck because they were so dehydrated. You know, those are my favorite parts.
Right. Do you remember that scene in Desert Runners where his foot is just so jacked? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it was awful. He had like he was like just lathering the bottoms of his feet in super glue, just trying to form some kind of like barrier. Oh man, it's just insane.
My favorite scene in that whole movie, and maybe in any endurance racing movie, is when the guy's just walking and it's like the sun is setting and he's just cussing out everything. That's so funny, man. Like I haven't personally been there to that extent, but I get it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's insane, but it's so cool though, especially to hear those kind of stories. But I really love your podcast and the guests that you've had on so far are awesome. And I'm going to put your link to your podcast in the show notes. That way people can jump on there and subscribe for sure. So is there anything that you're working on or about to work on that you want to share with people, or any races that you have coming up that you want people that they can be following you for?
Yeah, so I'm doing a 50K in a couple weeks, and I'm definitely like, this is the least trained I've been. So we'll see how that goes. I think it'll go fine, but I did a 11 miler this morning up some mountains here. So I'm like, I don't know. I think that's probably good.
I think you're good.
Well, and you eventually learn the little tricks and stuff. So I have that coming up, and then now I'm trying to really think about what I want to do for my next event. And there's something called adventure racing. Do you know about this?
Man, it looks familiar. It sounds familiar. I might have seen something on like Facebook or something, but like I have no idea what it is.
So I've done a few of them, and they're team events generally. And you do all sorts of different activities through it. And so I did one in Des Moines, Iowa, and then I did one in Shenandoah, Virginia. But it's a combination of like canoeing, mountain biking, and then orienteering / trail running. And it's really awesome because they give you a map the night before and you see all the checkpoints You have to trying to figure out checkpoints, and none of us know how to orienteer, which makes it even more fun. And then you just go and you're out in the mountains or out in the woods with your friends for basically an entire day, and it's a blast.
That's
it's
cool.
Like the most fun event, and I know it takes quite a bit to schedule it for people, and the race directors are probably putting in a lot of work, so there's not a lot of them around the country. And so I'm really looking for some of those, and I found one in Moab, which I think would be really cool. You end by like rafting down the river, but there's also like a 300-foot rappel.
Man,
yeah.
That is cool though.
Yeah, definitely. So, I've been trying to like mountain bike, which is a whole like learning curve kind of deal, just to get more prepared for something like that. And I live in Colorado now. So really when you talk about like what events are you training for, it's like, man, you could have so like millions of adventures here.
Colorado is beautiful. Like I've been several times, and it's just like, it's so amazing, and there's no humidity. It's really, but it's so pretty. Like just every view is just beautiful and perfect.
It is. So I'm looking right now in my office. I have a map on the back of my wall of the state, and there's so many like just adventures I want to have. I'm like, ooh, the Book Cliffs by Grand Junction. That would be super cool just to walk through and stuff. So, it's interesting. For me, it's more like what sounds fun and what can I include my friends with? Because I absolutely love those experiences where you're hanging with your buddies and you're in the middle of the woods or you're climbing a mountain. And, like I said, the racing is really fun because you get to know other people. But when it's like your true, like best friends in the whole world and you're going out and trying to do something borderline stupid, it's a blast, And then I'm also, along with that, doing something like that with the family, which obviously I have 2 younger kids. So you can't do anything really intensive, but you can start having these like mini adventures, and it's awesome. It's a blast. Like yesterday I was with my daughter and we went for, I don't know, like a mile hike, but we went on an adventure and we're pretending that there were like dinosaurs chasing us and stuff. I'm like, yeah, this
awesome.
is the best.
That's awesome. No, I love that. That's amazing.
So really like, all the social media stuff that I do is mostly like daily training, and just posting like the constant event. Like my buddy came out and he's like, "Is every weekend like this with you guys?" Because we just try to jam so much into it.
Right. That's really cool. And like, what's the best way for people to follow you on social media? That way they can keep up with what you're doing. And then I know you have a website for the podcast as well, right?
Yes, and it's just like a Bigfoot for everything. I've realized I can only do like 2 social medias.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
So what's the best 2?
I can't do like 3 or 4. I just can't do it. So usually I do Facebook. We have a Facebook group, Like a Bigfoot, and then Instagram is Like a Bigfoot also.
Cool.
I do have Twitter. I just never use it.
I know. I'm awful with Twitter, and
yeah.
I try to get better, and then I don't. It's hard though. If you have something that's working well, just do really great at those,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's cool. And then Chris, just a closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice to give the audience, maybe it's just something that helped you along the way, whether with your wellness journey or with your endurance training or just with anything. But if you just had just one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
Yes, I would say I'm going to pick a book. Do people do this normally?
Hey, listen, this is your thing. You go for it.
All right. Read the book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. It's here's the thing. Like when I read nonfiction books, I just want a really simple message, but I'm like, oh yeah, it's just a reminder of something really simple. And his book is basically what we talked about earlier of the small, consistent actions in your life are going to make huge differences. And the scary part is that could be the small, consistent, negative actions you're taking too. Where it's kind of like, I guess my example always is like, if you eat a bag of potato chips on a Tuesday, it's not that big of a deal. But if that's your constant, like every single day you're eating a bag of potato chips, that's going to eventually over time add up.
Right.
And vice versa. On the positive side, like if you decide you're going to wake up 15 minutes earlier every single day, not like adding 15 minutes every day, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're waking up early every single day, that adds up too, because think about all the things you can accomplish in that 15 minutes.
Right.
And you know, you wake up one day, it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but if you do that consistently over time, it's going to make all the difference. And it's such a powerful message, and it's such a simple message that people, you know, we just tend to we don't forget about it, but we just aren't conscious about it. And along with that, I know you're a fan of Rich Roll.
Oh, man. Love
his
Rich.
his article, which is why you should stop life hacking and invest in the journey, is basically my life philosophy, where it's like, hey, if you want to accomplish something, it's going to take hard work, and you're going to have to really put in an effort at it. And, you know, here's the cool thing about putting in an effort. Even if it doesn't wind up being the positive outcome you initially were going after, generally something positive comes out of putting in effort, even if it's something completely unexpected.
Right. Whether that's a connection or just a different experience. I mean, something will come from it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Or you build like a life skill, or you know, make a new friend, like whatever you're trying to do, even if you don't actually accomplish, you know, what you're initially set out to, you're going to accomplish something just by putting in that positive hard work. So, and doing it every single day.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, no, that's amazing, Chris. And thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you, and I love what you're doing, and definitely just keep up the amazing work with the podcast, because you're really doing an amazing job. Thank you. I want to have you on someday, because I just realized I talked for an hour and I don't know much about you. So. Hey, we'll make it happen. Sweet. Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Chris. I'm so excited for you guys just to follow his journey on social media, keep up with the races that he's doing, and just all the positive work that he's doing as well. But you can find all of the links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes. But you can also find all of those links if you go to my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's DRKASEY Johnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. And from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit more about each guest, be able to click on their links, their websites, and follow them there. So you'll be able to find all of Chris's information on my website as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Chris, be sure to jump on iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I appreciate the support so, so much. And just like we talked about in the intro before the podcast started, just if you want to buy my first children's book and support the Unlock Wellness Project, you can also do that by going to my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Shop tab and the children's book option. And that first children's book is there. And for each purchase of the book, the Unlock Wellness Project is going to be supplying a wellness bag to a child in need. So be sure to check that out and learn more. And just thank you guys so much for all of the support.